It is a great opportunity for me to present at this very prestigious conference some of the results of the last 10 years at the excavation that I lead, the excavation of Niğde, Kınık Höyük, and in particular the results that concern the latest occupation of the town that is hidden under the mound of Kınık Höyük in South Cappadocia, and an occupation that date to the Hellenistic period. We have then a period one of occupation dating to the Seljuk period, but that is a sporadic presence of very likely a seasonal village of people that would leave for the winter months at the site and as a camp and then move up in the mountain. Let me start from the end, something that we normally always skip. I really wanted to make sure this time to thank all institutions that help us making this possible. I speak of the financial as well as the institutional and logistic support. In particular, the General Directorate for Culture and for Cultural Heritage and Museums in the Republic of Turkey, but also the Foreign Ministry of Italy, and in particular, I would like to thank the Turkish Embassy, the American Embassy in Turkey, who generously provide us with a grant that will enable us to do a very significant restoration on some Hellenistic finds that Roberta will be talking about in few moments. While thanking them, my thanks go to all of our sponsors, and I have to remember also in particular how generous has been Turk Tractor in supporting us with the restoration of the Marble Eagle last year. Roberta also will speak about it. Kınık Höyük is a small site. All in all, at its maximum extension, it was 24 hectares. As you see, it is north of the Cilician Gates, north of Cilicia, in the Tianidis, some 30 kilometers far away from the main site of the region, which is the site of Tiana, modern Kemerizar. You see here some of the other main sites. They are only a selection, but just to give you an idea of where the site lies. And this is to give you an idea of the countryside, of the landscape, we are working in. The borderland plain is an arid, steppe plain in the center, and it was very likely not inhabited in any time in the past. So there were times in which it was a lake, time in which it was a shallow lake, maybe salty lake, time in which it was an arid steppe area. But as you see, on the other hand, there are very rich colluvial fans for land productivity and quantity of water, and they really characterize this landscape as well. The most impressive feature of the landscape, of course, is the Volcarda, and that divides all of the plateau, and in particular the southern part of it, in which we do research from the Mediterranean. Here in particular is Cilicia, and therefore the importance of being just north of the passage towards Cilicia. Here is the site. As you see, it's a typical mound site in a very green area. And here you familiarize with the 5 operations that we have opened along this 10 years. Today I will concentrate my talk, because of brevity, on Operation A and Roberta on Operation E. But as you see, there are other 3 operations investigating. So we're investigating the northern part of the site of the mound, but there is also investigation ongoing on the southern top and the southern slope of the mound with B and C, and Operation D investigates the lower town. You see that the work that we have done has a very deep diachronic scope, and once again, of all the periods that we have investigated, I will focus on Kınık Höyük period 3 and Kınık Höyük period 2. In fact, not even all of Kınık Höyük period 3, but what we call 3A, which is really the late Achaemenid, early Hellenistic, Middle Hellenistic period, roughly speaking 350-150 BCE. You see that besides the finds, even for the latest period, we have some few 14C days that support the dating that I am going to provide you with. Site identification, that's a tough one. In particular, it is for the early period, with Alvise Mates in an article in 2019 in the Kaushakla, in the 9th Animate Symposium, we have suggested that the site might correspond to the ancient city of Pavia, as per the so-called Atlantis story of the War of Tuanua, led by Suppiluliuma the First in CTH 40. For the later period, despite some uncertainty, there is, however, some sedimented literature there, and in particular, both Hilde Reste and the Queen Schneider and her group that did survey in the region in the late 90s, they suggest identification with Dratai as per Ptolemy's geography, as you say, 561, and Dratai would correspond with Thracias, Drician and Idrician in later times, and you see here the Stazio represented on the Tabula Poetingeriana, just next to Tiana. Yes, I am going to talk about Hellenistic Kınık Höyük. That is not really an area of my expertise. As you can imagine, I work much more in the pre-classical period. But I am really lucky and happy to have been able to build a group, a team of researchers around this, how can I say, atypical classical occupation. As we will see, there is some typical classical occupation here, but most of it, and that's the most amazing part, at least in my opinion, is profoundly local and brings up a completely different scenario than what one might expect. In any case, I am profoundly thankful to all of the individual, and I cannot go on one by one. I will only mention those that have particularly high merit in what I am going to discuss today, those that have led the fieldwork in the trench that I am going to present, those who have excavated from 2013 to 2019, the northwest building of the citadel of Kınık Höyük. That's Dr. Andrea Trameri from ISO and Martina De Rada from Pavia University. You notice here the name of classical archaeologists, epigraphists, numismatists, and the two experts for bioarchaeology in our team. And when there will be specific issues and you are interested, please note the name, or I can provide them later on. They are really the one who are competent in the specific matters. So there we go. As I told you before, Operation A and Operation E investigate the top part of the mound and the slope to the north of the site. So in particular today, I will be talking about the westernmost part of this large area, more or less what you see here, and that corresponds to the northwest building that we have been excavating, and that covers in its two main levels of occupation, the late Achaemenid to the late Hellenistic period. After me, Dr. Casagrande-Kim will present the result that under her direction for the western part and under the direction of Dr. Yolachan for the eastern part we achieved in the last years. So excavating the northwestern building has been a long process. As you see, we started 2013, we finished in 2019, but in fact we didn't finish. So we have now investigated a large portion of it, but as you see, the southern portion of this building still needs to be fully excavated, and so its connection to the main plaza Roberta will be talking about. That should have been one of the main aims of the campaign that should have started now in June. We postponed it to September, but whether it will be possible to do real excavation is difficult. We all know how difficult are the times we are living now, and of course we never give up with the hope of doing it. As I told you, there are two main levels of occupation of this building. An earlier level, that is our level 2, corresponding to Kınık Höyük period 3, that 3A in particular, that is the late Achaemenid to Middle Hellenistic period, let's say, and then the last phase, the last level, sorry, corresponding roughly to the second half of the 2nd century down to circa 35 BC. We'll see why I tell you the specific date. As you see, there were several phases in which the building had minor adjustments and for sure new floors and so on. I want you to pay attention to the building technique, because this is the first clear indicator of how far away we are from construction technique that we find on the Mediterranean and on the Aegean in the same period. So we are in a very traditional local technique. If you take the book of Neumann of Architektur Kleinasiens and you look the part of building technique, there you go. The technique is almost the same. What you see here is the two main levels. The bottom part is mud brick and plaster for our level 2, and then you see fieldstone foundations, very likely with some logs in them, and then an embedment of wooden logs, and on top you have the mud brick part. So this gives you an idea of local developments. what you see here is the 4 rooms that have been excavated for this early period, and the most iconic object that has been excavated, in particular in room 3. The 2 main rooms that we excavated entirely, room 3 and room 5, are very different. Room 3 was very well preserved, with all floors reused several times, and you see that also the function changed. So from some period it had a storeroom with several pithoi interred in the floor, and for example, in the last phase, of which we see the preparation with many broken sherds, we really can hypothesize a cultic function, and the main reason to do so is because in the floor, under the floor, a cache of votive objects have been found, and you see we have 3 entire statues of bovids and 1 falcon on real light. One immediately sees that this votive object is in a local Central Anatolian tradition. We have this kind of votives going back to Kultepe in the beginning of the 2nd millennium, and you see here other 2 examples, one from the mid-1st millennium, and the one that has been directly compared to ours is the one that Ujesh Newart and our colleague Atakanachai excavated a few years ago at the site of our end. The other room, it has a very extraordinary collection.
Lorenzo, your time is actually up, so I ask you to try to wrap up in a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Okay, I should have some 4 or 5 slides, and we'll try to run. Apologies for this. So in this deposit, as you see, we have a selected collections of bones that allows us to see and appreciate that they belong to very likely the results of banquets and feasting, a lot of charcoal, and a selection of broken figurines, most of them of birds of prey and bovids. As you can see, also here we are in a very local tradition. If we look at the ceramics, what is interesting is that we have no storage and no cooking ware, but once again, we have cups and basins, so materials to serve. This also goes in the direction of interpreting it as a banquet deposit. Let's see what happens in level 1. What we see is a complete change in materials. So we have the introduction of precious metals, metal object, typically recognizable as Hellenized object, and so we have Eastern sigillata appearing at the site, and we have figurines, for the first time human figurines, also in this case representing mainly deities, and in a fully Hellenized style. Above all, we have coinage, we have coin, we have a series of 3 major hoards, and here you see the reason that Andrew Mattis brought up for our dating, the lack of coins that indicate the name of Casagrande. So this means that there is no coin in the assemblage that can confidently be dated to after 37, 36 BC. And also, on the other hand, we see a very strong level of continuity in the use, not only in the architecture, but also in the use of the space, with, besides cultic areas, storage areas, and the study of the archaeobotanical record that is ongoing, as well as some finds, really suggest that this area was for storage of wine. So let me conclude. Between 350 and 150, the building technique and plan, the ceramic assemblage and the terracotta assemblage set the Northwest building entirely within a central Anatolian tradition. We can imagine that worshippers and patrons were likely all local, and so the ceramic and terracotta productions. This comes from the petrographic study of them. Both terracotta and red-banded ceramics might be older than the archaeological context, and they may date back to the mid-first millennium, so even some 200 years. We would have a conservation of earlier materials within the sanctuary. The temple reconstruction and the new phase that covers a time span between 150 and 35 BC show a strong continuity in building technique, in the space organization, and in the function. So we are not seeing the typical temple that we find on the Aegean, and with a completely different plan, materials used, and so on. However, portable paraphernalia, Hellenized figurines, metal objects, imports in particular, and bronze coins, all are indicative of an ongoing process of Hellenization taking place within this sanctuary. While a bottom-up process in this direction cannot be excluded, the direct involvement of the late Cappadocians kings from Ariarathes V onwards, promoting their Hellenizations of the region, seems very likely, and Roberta will tell more on this. As a final conclusion, Niğde Kınık Höyük can reflect archaeologically what is named as a temple city of Central Anatolia, set at the borderland of Hellenization, showing the process of negotiation and generation of new cults and style of life. Thank you very much.